Hey folks, I'm guessing you didn't wake up this morning excited to read 2 chapters full of the ancient laws of Exodus. Laws that, if we're honest, seem to make absolutely no sense today. Well, I hate to tell you this, but chapters 21 and 22 of Exodus, our readings for today, are filled with just that. These chapters that you're reading today are an exhaustive list of laws that at times they just seem bizarre. There's laws like, if you build an altar to God, do not build it of hewn stone. Or there's a law, when an ox gores a man to death, the ox shall be stoned and its flesh shall not be eaten. Or there's the law, if someone owns a pit and leaves it uncovered and a donkey falls into it, the owner of the pit shall make restitution, but can keep the dead donkey. Or how about this one? You shall not permit a female sorcerer to live. And here's my favorite weird law of Exodus. You must not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. Was that really a problem back then? Folks, what's this all about? Well, hang on, I'll explain. Hey folks, Pastor Hans here. We're in chapters 21 and 22 of the book of Exodus. Last session, you read the 10 Commandments in chapter 20, but today, we've got this laundry list of laws that starts at Exodus 20:22 and goes all the way to Exodus 23, verse 33. What's this all about? Well, you're going to have to bear with me here for a minute. This section of Exodus is often called the Book of Covenant. It's this collection of laws that can seem, really, really random. These laws cover topics from sexual ethics to issues of justice and violence to rules about the worship calendar. As a whole, as you read this section, it sort of feels like a long addendum to the 10 Commandments, or a commentary that adds another layer of laws on top of those 10 Commandments. So the question is, what's this all about? Why all these strange additional rules? Better yet, do we really need to read them? Isn't the 10 Commandments enough? I mean, folks, can't we skip this section? Well, I hate to tell you, but if we really want to understand Exodus, we've got to grapple with all of these laws. Now, remember, the Israelites, their journey is really about them moving toward a goal, and the goal isn't their destination, Canaan. The goal of the Exodus is that the Israelites become a nation that obeys and worships God, and that is a blessing to all the nations. This has been God's goal with the Israelites ever since God made a covenant with Abraham, and it continued with God's people now out in the wilderness. Now, here's what God recognizes. He recognizes that in order for the Israelites to reach this goal, the Israelites will need some training. This section of Exodus is all about training. It's a training manual. The Israelites need some help learning what it means to be God's obedient people before they can enter into the land of Canaan, a land that coincidentally is currently occupied by people that have very different ideas about gods and worship. Now, this is the context of all these laws we're reading about today. Now, hear me. They are not meant to be timeless laws. Like everything else in the Bible, they have a context. For example, the law about a virgin daughter being the property of her father, that doesn't fly anymore. In fact, it's downright offensive today. You see, these laws were given in order to train the Israelites and how they were to differentiate themselves from the people they would eventually encounter in Canaan. People who worshiped all kinds of other gods, people who don't worship Yahweh. For example, one of the first laws of this section, found in the final verses of chapter 20, it begins with instructions about not making gods of silver or gold. And also, there's a rule about the proper building of altars when the Israelites arrive in Canaan. They are to make their altars of earth or, if need be, unchiseled stone. And they shall not build altars with steps. Now, what's this all about? If we could go back into ancient Canaan before the Israelites arrived, chiseled stones and steps were marks of Canaanite altars. These laws were to ensure Israelite altars don't resemble Canaanite altars, and they don't get their worship confused with Canaanite pagan worship practices. You see, this is how this entire section, the book of the covenant, is meant to be read. It's a book of laws meant to train the Israelite people to differentiate themselves from those they will encounter when they finally arrive at the end of this long road trip they have to Canaan. It's training meant to prepare them for what's to come, training that ensures they will be known in this new land as a people who worship God and only God, people who will finally be a blessing to all the nations of the world. So as we close, I've got a couple questions for you. The first is this: what laws in this section seem absolutely bizarre? A fun question for you. But then consider this: how might those laws have differentiated the Israelites from whatever was going on among the Canaanites? And lastly, today, where do you think Christians need to do a better job of differentiating themselves from the culture around them? And where do Christians need to do a better job of not judging that culture? Folks, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.